Hi Facebook and YouTube, because I know you're going to be watching it on YouTube as well. My name is Kara-Leah, and what I'd like to speak to you about today is Kundalini Awakening and why it's only the beginning of the process. I work with a lot of people, a lot of clients who will come to me because they've had some kind of experience of Kundalini Awakening, and as a result of that they're experiencing uncomfortable symptoms or things they don't want to be experiencing. Sometimes their lives are being turned upside down, and in general when they come to me they're like, I need to fix this, I don't like this, what do I do around it? And what I've noticed is that there's a general lack of understanding in terms of the arc that is meant to unfold with the awakening and liberation process. So from the tantric perspective, there are like 9 stages on the awakening journey. From, stage 1 is basically your regular Joe who is, in just their ordinary life, right? Going to work, making the money, bringing home the bacon, that kind of thing. Doesn't really have a sense of there being anything other than material reality. Now, awakening, when it occurs, and it's not always called Kundalini Awakening, that's one term that's used, but lots of people will have an awakening that they will never use those terms for. But awakening, when it happens, is simply the shift from stage 1 to stage 2, where there's a realization that there's something more to life. And sometimes there'll be an experience of that. There might be an experience of oneness, like unity consciousness, or there might be experiences of bliss, or there might be spontaneous kriya that comes through the body. Like something will unfold and the person is like, oh my God, life is not the same. And often those experiences of awakening can be so strong that the person thinks that something amazing has happened, or that this is the thing, like, oh my God, I've awakened. But this, whether it's called Kundalini Awakening or not, is only the beginning. It is only the invitation. It shifts people from stage 1 to stage 2, but you've still got all the way to stage 9 to go. And what will often happen as well is that when people have an awakening, they're not necessarily even on the spiritual path. They may not have been doing any kind of yoga or meditation practice, and they have no perspective, or what we would call view, on reality that helps them to integrate their experience and know how to respond to it. And they haven't done the challenging work that happens in yoga and meditation, whereby people's samskaras, which are the blockages, the traumas that are in the system, will be digested and devoured and released, right? So yoga as a path, or as a practice, is very systematic in the way that it will clear the energy body of samskaras, right? Which are ways of thinking there, and beliefs, like vikalpas are beliefs, ideas that we have about the world. And for most people who experience an awakening or Kundalini now, they haven't done that work. And so that's why the awakenings often lead to challenges in life, because the blockages haven't been cleared. So you might wake up to the fact that there is more to life than you realized before, and it's often uncomfortable. But if you don't then start to do the liberation process, that awakening won't actually lead you to awakeness. You won't actually awaken as your way of perceiving reality, because an awakening experience is very different from being awake, right? Being awake is a paradigm shift in the way that you experience reality. You simply do not experience reality in the same way, and sometimes in a Kundalini awakening there is a taste of that, there is a feeling of that. That happened for me in 2004 when I had a Kundalini awakening, is that there was a complete paradigm shift for me, and all of reality was experienced differently. Unfortunately for me, because I hadn't done the hard work, etc., then I ended up going into psychosis. I ended up in the psych ward, and I ended up being sedated and medicated. And when I woke up, that paradigm shift that I'd experienced was completely gone, and I was right back in what I'd call conditioned mind, experiencing life through the mind again, which felt like hell after having had the paradigm shift and experiencing reality in that way. So to be really clear on that, is that awakening, being awake is not an experience. It's not collecting experiences. It is a paradigm shift in the way that reality is like processed or perceived or seen, okay? So if you've had any kind of awakening, recognize that that is actually an invitation to then do the work to liberate yourself, to have a paradigm shift. So I mentioned that there's like 9 stages of awakening, and Kundalini awakening experiences happen between stage 1 and 2, right at the beginning of the journey. They are simply an invitation onto the path itself. That paradigm shift that I'm speaking of, that doesn't actually happen until stage 6 and 7, when there's a complete paradigm shift into non-duality or awakeness. Okay, so if you've had an awakening, if you've had a Kundalini awakening, and you're serious about the liberation process, because what often happens too is someone has a Kundalini awakening and it turns their life upside down, and they're like, I'm just going to want to go back to how I was. I don't want to do the spiritual stuff. I don't want to have this experience. I just want to go to work and be normal. And they'll try and resist it, and they'll suppress it and do all of that. And as far as I'm aware, that doesn't really work, is that eventually you're going to have to turn toward the Kundalini experience and start to work with the energy and start to work with what's coming up, start to work with the samskaras and the blockages in order to liberate. So from that perspective, it is a hell of a lot easier if you just go, oh, I've had an awakening. It's an invitation to the path of liberation. I am going to deep dive into this path of liberation, discover what it is I need in order to walk this path so that I can have a major paradigm shift and become a liberated being. Because in essence, that's what it's about. It's about being a liberated being. And what you're being liberated from is the conditioning of the mind and from identifying as anything, right? Most of us identify as, I'm going to set that, I'm not even going to go into that right now. That's way too much to go into. But just to recognize awakening is an invitation to the liberation process. The liberation process is where the rubber hits the road. It is the work of digesting and devouring samskaras. If you look at some of my other videos, I have spoken about that on those videos. So if you have had an awakening, start to research and find out and study with people that can lead you on the liberation process, because that is what it's really all about. And doing that liberation process will eventually take you into the paradigm shift that a Kundalini awakening will sometimes promise or tempt you with, or show you a glimpse of, you see. Alrighty, any questions from anyone who's watching? I can see a few of you there right now. If you do have any questions about Kundalini awakening, about the liberation process, throw it down. If not, I'm going to wrap this up and get it uploaded onto YouTube soon. All right, we'll call that a day. So my name is Kara-Leah. You can find me on Patreon, where I share more of my personal experiences of walking this road of liberation, because it's a day in, day out thing. Liberation is about how you work with your partner, how you work with your children, how you work with your work colleagues, how you engage with reality, basically. So I'm doing more of my personal posts now on Patreon. Used to do them on Facebook, but I'm stepping away from that. You'll also find me on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll also find me on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram. Sending so much love your way. May your path be full of unexpected blessings.